Hi and welcome back to the Siren YouTube channel. Let's crack straight on with part 2 of this desk build, picking up exactly where we left off from part 1, getting these boards machined down and glued up. Let's see how we get on. So the first task was trying to plane down one surface on these boards to reference against the fence. As you can see, the boards are just really big and heavy, so it was quite difficult to keep them flat as they were passing through. I used 2 adjustable supports, but because of the sheer weight of these boards, as you pass towards the end, the weight lifts the board off of the planer bed, which is not good. The safety conscious amongst you will notice that I've tucked in my hoodie toggles here. I do not fancy getting sucked into a planer thicknesser. It took several attempts here to get a flat finish to reference off. So after getting it as best as I could, I'm moving on now to jointing an edge. So I've adjusted the protective cover to suit. But again, we had the same problem here, whereby as you get towards the end of the board, the weight of the board hanging off the edge, even with an adjustable support just out of shot, the board lifts. So you get a very uneven surface towards the back end. So I actually roped in my best friend Craig from bitsbox.co.uk. Craig's a first timer on a planer thicknesser, so I'm lecturing him here on the safety and the nastiness of it, whilst forgetting to tuck in my hoodie toggles. So who am I to lecture anyone on planer thicknesser safety? And the idea behind having 2 people was that we were going to try and put enough pressure down on the board as we get towards the end to prevent the end from lifting off the planer bed. As you can see, even with 2 of us, as you get towards the end, it lifted again. I can't remember what we found so funny there, but I think we managed to knock over everything in the workshop. Had to stop for an important text. Unfortunately, after even several attempts, we were still left with some bumps and ridges. We just had to call it quits on it. So next step was to run the boards through the thicknesser. This was slightly easier because the thicknesser bed helps to support the boards as they get towards the end, but even so, it was not a perfect finish. And this process really highlighted how badly I need a dust extractor. As you could probably tell from that footage, even with 2 people, that really didn't go very well at all. These boards are simply just too big for my machines. It's been an excellent lesson as to the limitations of my workshop and my machinery. This is definitely too big to achieve a seamless jointed edge on these boards. There's still gaps here. So what I'm going to have to do is use a hand sander to get this as near as possible. And my friend came up with a great suggestion to actually use pocket holes to join the boards. Because this is a desktop, we won't actually see the bottom day to day, so we can put a series of pocket holes along the bottom just to keep those glue joints nice and strong. And because there's a cross brace for the desk anyway, there shouldn't be any issues with strength. And what we'll have to do is just gap fill any remaining gaps in there with the sawdust and glue trick, which you'll see. I think that's the best we can really achieve on this one. You've got to know when you're defeated. So I start off by finding the best combination of the boards that I could get, which gave me the least amount of gaps and the best grain pattern, and then just gave it a mark so I remembered which one is which. I took my random orbit sander with quite an aggressive paper on here and just hacked away with the sander just to try and get these boards as close as I can and take out the ridges and snipes that the planar thicknesser left us with. This was a very long and tedious process. Every now and then I just check the ridge for square. So next step was to roughly measure out where I'm going to put the pocket holes. Didn't need to be super accurate here because it's not going to be seen, just as evenly spaced as I could do by eye. So just using one of the pocket holes from the jig, I spaced these out as evenly as I could. And a quick clean up. So now on to assembling and gluing up the boards. I'm actually using my kitchen floor here, mainly because the conditions in the workshop were poor temperature-wise for a glue up, and the kitchen floor is actually a nice flat, even surface, so it gives me lots of room to work, and in hindsight I could never have done this in the workshop with the amount of space that I have. And as this kitchen is due for renovation anyway, it doesn't matter that I'm messing up the floor or anything like that, which is handy. So I'm using good old Titebond 2 here. In a previous video I discussed my findings between this and Gorilla Wood Glue. So we just want to get a nice even distribution of glue along the edge. It's not essential to wear gloves here, but I find it handy because you can then quickly remove them if you need to touch something that you don't want to get glue on. Initially I actually drove in the pocket screws. You'll see in a bit I actually decided to take those out, and I'll explain why. Now I just use a couple of pieces of scrap pine just to act as cauls to protect the wood. And just tightening down the clamps. Here I'm just backing off all the pocket screws just so I can clamp these up. So I'm then applying some sash clamps to the upper side of the table just to try and even out the warping. These boards did actually warp quite considerably towards the ends. You'll notice that I had to go back several times and readjust the end clamps to try and straighten these out. I knew I'd find a use for these weights one day. As you can see, I had to stop several times to catch my breath because it's a very frantic process. I wanted to get all this done before the glue started to go off, which was no easy task. So no amount of weight on these would actually straighten them out. And I actually have no idea why there is a random tomato in the corner of the kitchen. So I could not get the ends of the boards to straighten out no matter what I tried. So here I've just grabbed some straight edges and a G-clamp, and that actually worked really well. That pulled in the boards quite nicely. So I then repeated the process as best as I could on the other end with the tools that I had to hand. So that was a very frantic, very messy and gluey race against the clock. Absolutely sweating and out of breath. The boards warped a bit towards that end and towards this end. I managed to straighten that out as much as I can. As you can see, I've piled weights and all sorts on here just to try and even things out. There's still a little bit on that end which I'll have to take out with a plane. But overall it's not going to be too bad. I decided as I was going along to unscrew the pocket hole screws just for now and just let the clamps dry that up level, because I wasn't sure if the pocket holes would prevent the clamps from pushing the wood any further together. So I thought I'd take those out for now, and then after it's gone off for an hour or two, we'll just quickly screw those in. So now I could do with a massive cup of tea. Okay, so the glue's been drying about an hour. I've just scraped off as much excess glue as I can for now. I obviously can't get to the underside of the project because it's just so big. I'm not going to be able to turn this over without disturbing all the clamps. But that's fine, at least one side is less sanding to do, so that's better than nothing. So I'm now going to drive in these pocket screws. I think that's probably enough time for them not to mess with the alignment of everything. Glue should have gone off pretty well by now. So let's see how this goes. So it's the morning after now, and now it's time to see how these glue joints dried up. So let's begin the task of taking all these clamps off. Okay, so we've got the board turned over now to the other side. This will actually be the top of the desk. And considering how much trouble the glue up gave me, I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. For the most part, it's quite flush. There's only some small little differences in height. It goes out a bit towards the ends, which is to be expected because that's where all the trouble was. You can see there's a bit of a step there, but it's not drastic and it's nothing that we can't take out with a hand plane, or even a belt sander would probably do it. Same at this end, just a little bit of a step between the boards. The glue joint overall looks pretty good. We know from the previous footage that there is going to be gaps, however it looks quite consistent, so that will go with the look of the desktop. We know we've strengthened it with pocket hole screws, so there shouldn't be any issues there. So the next step is just to take a nice sharp chisel and scrape away all this excess glue. That's it for part 2. Tune in next time and we'll have a look at getting this tabletop all sanded down and hopefully applying a bit of finish on it. We'll see. Please like and subscribe if you would, and tune in for the next part. Thanks again. How many of you had to plane down your kitchen floor before? Not many, I would imagine. Good job on replacing this floor soon.